Welcome to the GTN Show. We are back and so is racing. We've got race results as well as some exciting news of some upcoming race announcements. There's a couple of running world records, a pro swapping nationalities and some details of the much anticipated sub-7, sub-8 record attempts. I'm going to kick things off by having a quick look through some of the things we've spotted in the world of triathlon over the last week. On this first couple of posts from Daniela Reef, and it looks like she is getting ready to race. So she's been in the wind tunnel, as we've seen many of the pros already early season dialing in those marginal gains. And just a few days ago, she has now announced that she's going to be racing in the Ironman 70.3 Dubai on the 5th of March to kick off her season. So it's going to be exciting to see Daniela back racing. She had quite an early finish to her season last year with an injury, so she's had a long block of training, and it'll just be great to see her back on the race course. Talking of people being back racing, the Olympic champion in the marathon, Eliud Kipchoge, is actually going to be back racing the marathon, and he's heading back to Tokyo for his next marathon, which is exciting. It is the postponed 2021 Tokyo Marathon that didn't happen because of COVID. They did a virtual running of it, and it's actually going to happen on the 6th of March. So busy weekend there for international sport, but he's thanked the organisers for allowing the athletes to actually be able to have this opportunity to race. And obviously he's got some good memories from there, so it'll be interesting to see if he's targeting a personal best or just going for the win. But one to keep an eye on. Over to New Zealand for this next post that we spotted from Cam Brown, the veteran of New Zealand triathlon, just a bit of a legend in the sport, who is still racing and has been so for many decades, I think. But as we've covered in the last few weeks, there's been so many races cancelled in New Zealand. It's been pretty frustrating for the pros down there due to COVID. Ironman New Zealand was obviously cancelled. Well, Cam has found a race. I don't think it was a particularly hot field, but he competed in the People's Triathlon Series race number 1, an Olympic distance, so quite short for him, winning it by 10 minutes, but looking very strong in his photos as well. Our next one comes from Gustav Eden, who's been getting sort of busy behind the scenes, finding himself new partners, new sponsors, and he's just teamed up with HEP Global. Now, apparently he's going to be joining Sebastian Kienle, who's already on the team. We've got the likes of Imogen Simmons, Daniel Bakkegaard. Now, HEP Global are all about looking at sustainable energy, and Gustav has said here that he really finds sports difficult because of the performance on race day without thinking too much about what's going on around us. It's getting harder and harder to ignore the changes going on, and I'm in a position where I can choose my partners to have a positive impact on our planet. So HEP's slogan is "There is no planet B," and it's something I really get behind. I'm hopeful together we can do whatever it takes. Well, it's really nice to see an athlete being aware of the situation, especially I imagine living in Norway where they train so much in the outdoors and must be very aware of their environment. But it's exciting to see Gustav adding to his sponsors in what's going to be a pretty big year for him and Christian Blummenfelt representing Norway with the Double World Championships coming up. And our final piece we've noticed actually comes from a diver. Olympic champion Tom Daley has been completing a version of triathlon as well as rowing, basically to raise money for comic relief, and he has made a journey from the Olympic Park in London down to his home city in Plymouth. He started with a row. He had a couple of days to complete the cycle, including an open water swim and then further cycling before running the final leg back to Plymouth, including that finish with an ultra marathon run. For someone who is used to staying in the warmth of a swimming pool, quite an impressive feat. And actually he was trained by lots of fellow Olympians and also had a little bit of help from Mark Buckingham, who works with the Brownlee brothers. So lots of expertise on the triathlon aspect as well, but an amazing feat by Tom Daley. It took him 4 days to do that, and he's raised thousands of pounds. So if you do want to go and check that out, I'd suggest looking at Comic Relief, who do great things for charities all around the world. On to Tri News now, and at last we have a date and a venue for the much anticipated sub-7 and sub-8 record attempts. There's been various rumours going around for a while, and we've all been kept on tenterhooks wanting to know where and when this is going to happen. Well, the weekend of the 5th and 6th of June has been booked. The exact date is going to depend on the weather, so they've got a little bit of leeway there, and the location is going to be in Germany. Now, the majority of it is at Germany's Deckert Lausitz Ring, a rather fast circuit. They're also going to be swimming in a lake just down the road. So the exact details, the event's going to begin in Lake Seftonberg, which is so large that it can actually be a point-to-point course. In fact, it's going across the lake for that, so avoiding any dead turns that would slow the swimmers down and makes it perfect. And the lake is actually situated about 16 kilometres from the racetrack, but apparently the cyclists should have a prevailing wind going from the lake to the track, so that won't slow them down very much. And once they're on that track, well, it's a 5.85 kilometre loop, and they're going to be completing loops until they have covered that iron distance bike ride. So there's no dead turns, no stops on that, and it will make it incredibly easy for swapping paces in and out and being able to support the athletes with any nutritional needs or any timing and really keeping them on pace. And then they stay on this same loop for the run, so you'll have the same advantages when it comes to that. Well, apparently there had been rumours that the course might be in America, but it does make sense to see the location being in Europe, as the 4 athletes who are going for this record are all European, and it'll hopefully fit into their calendars a little bit easier. That said, it does fall just 4 weeks after the Ironman World Championships in Utah, so it'll be interesting to see how that works. And we've also recently seen Nicola Spirig have that bike accident, so it doesn't give her that long to recover. So time is going to be of the essence with this. But all of the athletes have seemed pretty happy with that location. That area should be pretty quick. It's designed for a nice surface. They've checked altitude, they've looked at the wind conditions, the average weather. Everything has been looked at when deciding on this. Lucy Charles-Barclay has approved the swim. She says here, the calm water swim will also create an opportunity to start the challenge in the best possible way, fast. And that is what I want to do, so I can not only beat sub 8, but also match the current men's time of 7:21. And that was the time that Christian Blummenfelt set in Cozumel last year, which kind of blew our minds of how fast that was. And Lucy is now targeting to go that quick. So it is really exciting to see this ramping up, and now we've got the details. I'm sure people will be looking at the stats and just predicting how quick they can go. We've seen all sorts of numbers bandied about, and actually Mark Allen, I think, came up with a time of 6:30 as his predicted time for the men's. But we'd love to know how fast you guys reckon these athletes can go. Now you know the location, we know a bit about the format, we don't know exactly the pacing patterns that the athletes are going to be using. I'm sure we'll hear more in weeks to come. But we'd love to know your thoughts on those predicted times. You can leave your comments in the section below. Well, next up, we have an athlete swapping nationalities. Richard Murray, who has represented South Africa for all of his professional career and just missed out on actually representing South Africa at the Olympics this year. So close, in fact, that he was in Tokyo. He was entered for the individual event, and due to his heart condition and his lack of fitness, he didn't end up actually racing, but saved himself so that he could compete in the relay. And then after the individual, sadly, his teammate Henry Schoeman ended up with a stress fracture and the whole team had to withdraw. So having been so close to competing in 2 events, he ended up not even competing at all. But his wife, Rachel Kalmer from the Netherlands, did get to compete, and he got to support her, and she had a brilliant race. Well, there's the link. He has actually just announced that he is no longer going to be representing South Africa, but he's now going to be moving to the Netherlands and representing them. And he's been welcomed by the Netherlands team. He's actually put a post out here saying, from 2022 onwards, I will compete for the Netherlands. I believe my future lies in the Netherlands, and I'm excited to progress towards Paris 24. I will always return to South Africa in the future, but I intend to coach and race for Triathlon Netherlands. I will always stay Richard, but just a much more Dutch version of myself. Now, it's quite interesting. He alludes to coaching, so he's obviously looking at the bigger picture and the future, but it does sound like Paris is still very much in his sights, with it being, just over 2 years away now, so quite a short focus. But like I said, he's married a Dutch woman and spends a lot of his time there training. And it's interesting because when we see athletes swap from one nationality to another, it's all about the Olympic cycle and actually having long enough for that transition to happen. But apparently South Africa have sort of given him their blessing, which means this transition can happen more quickly. And I think the fact that he didn't actually toe the start line in Tokyo allows him to make that change more quickly as well. So he will be able to represent a different country in just 2 years' time. So unusual circumstances, but exciting that, you know, he's got that support, and it's obviously where his future lies. And hopefully after that heart operation, he can have a much more successful couple of years into the next Olympic cycle. Well, another bit of news, or our last bit of news, comes from the PTO, and they have just announced a scheme to, well, enable athletes to get a refund on their entry fee in exchange for a little bit of help. So it's called the Social Referral Rebate Program. And if you enter one of their new PTO Tour events, and then you can recommend it to 3 other friends or colleagues or fellow athletes who go ahead and enter that same event and pay their entry, well, if you've given them the correct code, then you can actually get you'll get that refund back for future dates. Or once you've competed, you'll get that money back at the end of the month. So it's a pretty good incentive, because you can potentially get your friends to come and do an event with you, which is always great, but you can also get a little bit of return in the money, and then they can do the same. So it's just trying to grow the entry fee, grow the family, with a nice bit of incentive from the PTO. And now for What the Tech. We've just got a couple of very quick pieces. One from Quintana Roo, who you might think of as a bike brand. Well, they have actually just launched a new wetsuit, and apparently it was wetsuits that they originally started with many decades ago. And they've now got the new version of the Hydro 6.2 and the Hydro 5.2. And something that caught my eye, they have announced that these are going to be unisex wetsuits, which I kind of thought was a step backwards, taking away from the fit. But apparently they have 14 different fits, and they've come up with this because in the past they've seen men wearing their female wetsuits and vice versa, and realised that actually all body shapes are so different. And yes, men and women are different, but each individual is also different. So they've come up with these 14. And on top of that, you actually have 14 days to test the wetsuit. Yes, you can actually go and wear the wetsuit, and if you're not happy with it or it doesn't fit, you can return it, not just for a credit note, but a full refund, which I think is quite impressive. On top of this, they have a 2-year no-fault warranty with this wetsuit, which is pretty strong considering what wetsuits get put through in racing and training. So yeah, interesting to see that when I looked into it closer, that actually unisex could be the way forward for wetsuits. I mean, yeah. Who knows with that one? Our other piece of tech news comes from Therabody, who were formerly known as Theragun. You've probably seen those percussion guns that are great for massaging your legs and just helping you recover. Well, they have now gone into the leg compression area as well with their brand, and they have launched the Therabody compression boots, and they are calling them the Recovery Air line, the new jet boots, which, like, I think we've sort of got quite used to seeing, basically will help with compression to return the blood flow and are great for recovering from racing. They've got a portable version that don't require any pumps or any leads, so really good if you're traveling. And now on to race news, and Racing Down Under is back. Australia held the 70.3 Geelong, which was quite exciting just to see athletes back in action. Sam Appleton had been bigging this up as a race for his return, and he didn't disappoint. He took the win, but the event was actually led out by Josh Amberger in the swim, which is no surprises there, although Sam Appleton just a few seconds off his heels, and those two pretty much biked together, but Sam Appleton put the 3 together to take the win by almost 2 minutes. Steve McKenna, with an incredibly strong run, a 1:11.5, managed to overtake Amberger to finish second, and Josh Amberger held on for 3rd place in the men's race. Now, the women's race was won by Lotte Wilms. Now, I just need to mention Ellie Salthouse was targeting this race, and I think probably the favourite, having won it many times in the past, and she was strong out of the swim but just faded on the bike and the run, so it's something she needs to go back and have a look at in her training. She'll be working out what went wrong there, but it was Lotte Wilms from the Netherlands who actually took the win in a 4:07, an impressive almost 4 minutes ahead of Amelia Watkinson of New Zealand, who's been returning from injury. She's been doing some bike racing, and that proved with a very strong bike, and it was Grace Deck with an incredible 1:19 half marathon finish on the run, who finished in 3rd. These next 2 bits of race news aren't race results, but very much news. And the first and the big one this week comes from Xterra. Now, the Xterra World Championships have just announced that they are leaving their birthplace, Maui, for the first time since 1996, when the Xterra World Championship started, and it's going to Trentino in Italy this October, the 1st of October this year. Now, this is actually a move to try to take the sport around the world, so it's not just going to be in Italy moving forwards. They say they will return to Maui at some point, but they want to take their event to all of the continents that compete in Xterra. But they've noted that the largest percentage of their athletes competing in this and the most events are held in Europe. So they thought, well, they should come to Europe themselves, and in a way they're going to be reducing their carbon footprint as a result, because there'll be less athletes having to travel out to Hawaii and more coming from this catchment area. So it's pretty exciting to see this. I mean, we are speaking from a British perspective, so hopefully at GTN we'll get to go and at least have a look and maybe even take part in the event. But for something that has been so iconic and on that island ever since it started, it's some pretty major news. And yeah, we're excited here. So love to know if you guys are maybe now considering trying to qualify for Xterra. If you are based in Europe, what are your thoughts? Do share in the comments below. And another new venue, or return of a venue, is the WTCS is going back to Bermuda. Now, there was disappointment, you might remember, last autumn when Bermuda was supposed to host the World Triathlon Sprint Distance and the Relay World Championships, and we were going to see Flora Duffy, the newly crowned Olympic champion from Bermuda, returning to compete in front of a home crowd, as well as having her homecoming and that day, that national day, the national holiday to celebrate her success. Well, it is a year late, but the WTCS is actually going to return to Bermuda on the 5th of November. This is part of the World Triathlon Series. It's also going to, starting off in Yokohama, hopefully in May of this year. Then it's going on to Leeds, Montreal, Hamburg, Chengdu in China, before heading to Bermuda. And it's going to finish with the finals that are going to be held in Abu Dhabi on the 24th and the 26th of November. And these last couple of pieces are all about running and new world records. Yes, the USA Track and Field 100-mile championships took place last weekend, and a new world record was set by Camille Herron. Now, at the age of 40, she titled her post, "Faster as a Master." So she's now in the 40 to 45 age group. So she actually got a few records on the way. So she's got the new 100-mile world record, which she actually held before. She's now clocked a time of 12 hours, 41:11, which is the equivalent of 7:37 per mile or 4:44 per kilometre for 100 miles. She also got the 12-hour world record on the way, completing 94.5 miles in the 12 hours. She also got the 50-mile age group world record for the age 40 to 44. I don't think that one's going to go for a while, and she obviously won the overall national championships in that. So pretty impressive. She took off time from her previous record that she held back from 2017. So incredible running at the age of 40, and just showing how an endurance sport really can. I think we're just seeing boundaries getting broken all the time. But on the flip side, we are also seeing world records still over the very much shorter distance, because Jakob Ingebrigtsen broke the indoor 1500 metre record with an incredible time of 3 minutes 30.6, taking off almost half a second. Well, this was the first race of the season for the newly crowned Olympic champion. And yeah, he just said, great way to start racing of the year of 2022. And I think no one can deny him of that. And it's going to be exciting to see. That was on the indoor track, what he can do when we head into the outdoor season. All right, and that brings us on to Caption Competition. And we had this wonderful picture last week of James looking a little greedy with his 3 ice creams. And it got you guys flowing in with the suggestions for the captions. We've got one from Fergal Akala, who says, the good thing about being a triathlete is you get 1 treat per sport. Ooh, sign me up for the next decathlon. I mean, I did pentathlon, so I should have got 5, really, shouldn't I? Like that one. Chloe Martin Brown comes in with, James gives the finger to suggestions of a new diet regime. Savage Pro, I scream when I heard the cost of entering triathlons. Very on point for last week's show. I like it. Aria Endurance says, when Mr. Whippy sponsors the aid station. Imagine that. Imagine getting ice cream at aid stations, and we'd all be signing up for Ironmans, wouldn't we? But the winner this week, and the winner of the GTN cap, goes to Too Overrated. Coach said I should take it chilled during the off season. This is how we stay cold in South Africa. Well, congratulations to Overrated. Do get in contact and we will get a cap sent out to you. And for your chance to win a GTN cap, we have this photo this week. So make sure you leave your wonderful suggestions in the comments section below. And that brings this week's show to an end. We've got a couple of great videos coming up. I did a bit of suffering last weekend in an event called The Last Man Standing. Well, that video is coming out this weekend. I'm not going to tell you much more than that at the moment. We've also got how to distribute your power on a triathlon bike course. So looking at when to put the power down, when to ease up. It's quite a technical one. I'm looking forward to seeing that myself. So keep an eye for that coming up on the weekend. And if you've enjoyed today's video, well, give us a like and hit that globe to subscribe. And remember, we've still got plenty of selection on the GTN shop. The link should be on screen now. If you want a couple of videos to watch before you head off, we've got how to train for an Ironman, perfect for this time of year. And is running bad for your knees?